Desk Ladyada.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the desk of Ladyada. Lots of stuff, hardware hacking going on at my desk. Also, we're right in the middle of the holidays for those celebrating Yom Kippur. I hope you have an easy fast. Okay, let's go to my computer and we'll do a couple things and we'll get into some hardware chat. So, Playground, Pliables. Wanted to let people know that we've released a bunch of guides, pages into Circuit. Pardon me, it's been a day. We released pages for Adafruit Playground, which is our site, which is kind of like the learning system that folks are so aware of. All the guides that we've published, I don't even know how many guides at this point, a couple thousand guides. Let's see. All guides. I don't know. We used to have a number at the bottom. It is almost 3,000 guides, Phil. We're gonna get to 3,000 soon. And for guides that we publish, these are from Adafruit people in-house, folks that we have budget to give them to write guides for their projects, tutorials on products and other fun stuff. But we have often customers and people saying, hey, I want to write a guide and use your learning system because it's like a trustworthy place to teach people, to have curriculum. And we don't have a separate way for people to run their own learning system site. And there are other sites like Instructables and Hackster and Element 14 and Hackaday.io. But if you want to have something on the learning system, make your account on Adafruit, and then you can publish your own pages here. And one of the promises, we're going to have is we're not going to ever have ads or pop-ups or interstitials or require people to log in to see guides. So I published a guide on making bilingual books with ChatGPT. So it's kind of like techie. It's like a crafty project. I didn't really feel like it was good content for Learn because it doesn't have like a lot of electronics at this time. But it would be a good content for Adafruit Playground. So anyways, anyone can make an account on adafruit.com and publish their own guides and use our learning system. Okay, so now on to some hardware. So let's go to the overhead. Okay, whoa, I'm just gonna look at my feet. Okay, so we got the new latest version of the Qualia ESP32S3 board for the RGB 666 displays. That's what we're calling like round bar. This is like a square display. And a few small changes to this, removing the NeoPixel, shuffling a couple pins around, making the backlight controllable over the expander, etc. So this is an Arduino demo using Arduino GFX. I'm going to clean up all those examples, see if maybe we can get them published into the Arduino repo for Moon on Our Nation. They're doing a great job of maintaining that library. I don't feel like I need to rewrite Arduino_GFX when they did such a great job for these parallel TFT displays using the S3's built-in peripheral. But this is all cleaned up and ready to go. And, we'll do tutorials on how people can play Cinepack videos and MP3s and stuff. But so far, so good. This is just a little, mini demo showing that it's working. And then if you go back to the computer, we're also adding support into CircuitPython. I did show like one demo once, I think, of this all working with CircuitPython. And it was very like hacky and like pasted together with, bubble gum and sticks and tape. But we're now becoming more formalized in how it's being supported. So it's coming soon. It's like we were testing it, proof of concept. Now it's time to kind of finish up the API. And Jepler's been working on that. Jepler's going on a well-deserved holiday soon, but hopefully in the next week we'll do all these little teeny cleanups that I'm noticing as I'm using this. And the board is actually in the Adafruit shop for sign up. We got photos of it. I have to make the tester, so it's like not going to be in the shop for like another day or two at least. But if you want to sign up for this board, you can put your email in, and we don't email you unless the product comes into the shop. So that's great. I've been working on. People have watched me work on the Qualia for like the last 2 months. A lot of exploring, experimenting. But I'm so glad you know, Mr. Ladyada bought, you know, or suggested I buy these square and round displays of the last 3 years, and I've been sitting in a box for years and years waiting for a good project to use them with. Having them work with CircuitPython or Arduino with ESP32 is going to be like super fun. So people can do cool projects. So that's coming soon too. And then speaking of displays, another thing, well, I did want to mention just because, folks are like, when are you going to get all your SAMD51 stuff in back stock? I mentioned the SAMD51 is one of the last chipsets that is just still really affected by the chip shortage, but thankfully they're coming back into stock. DigiKey has the J20, which we used in like PyPortals, the G18, which we actually don't use as much, and also some G19s, which we use in the Itsy Bitsy and we use it in the Itsy Bitsy, we use it in the Monster Mask, and we use it in the Neo Trellis. And you'll note that those are some of the ones that are out of stock. We also got some SAM-E51s in. So, we did get a shipment of some chips, which means that you're going to see some of these SAM-E51 M4 boards come back into stock, some of whom have been out of stock for like over a year. And it's been like a downer. Like we've prioritized the Feather M4, and we did have the Feather M4 we did have in stock for quite a bit, and then we just recently ran out. And we have, a couple Itsy Bitsies in stock, and the Metro M4s were also pretty popular, but the Hallowing M4 like just totally has not been manufactured since like last Halloween. But I really want to get the Hallowings and the Monster Mask in the store for this Halloween, because I think it'll make for a great Halloween project builds. So that's happening. So people I know were like, oh, I want to do 7051 stuff. I feel like you'll be able to do that soon. Pardon me. Okay. And then lastly, okay, let's go to the overhead again. I'll show the last little bit of hardware. I didn't do any like new stuff really this week. A lot of it was just like getting all this existing stuff kind of ready for sale and demo and stuff. So this is, I showed this off. This is the revision of the 2.4-inch TFT FeatherWing, very popular board that has like been out of stock for like 2 years because TFT prices were ridiculous, and it didn't make sense for me to stock something when the price of a single display was like $20. They're back down to reasonable prices now. And then the STMPE 610-811 got discontinued. So it was one of those like 1-2 punch things where it's like I couldn't get one thing and then I couldn't get the other thing. And then I was sort of like, you know what, I'm just going to not work on this for a bit. But now everything's back in stock. And so if you're going to do a redesign the whole thing. So I made this button right angle so you can reset it from the side. The switch is still this way because I thought that would be easier for people to work with. Add a STEMMA QT port here. And then because I'm now using the TSC 2007, which is an I2C expander, the chip select line, this actually was backlight, but you'll see I cut it, and I actually ended up making this pin IRQ. So in the final version Rev D, which is what I ordered, this will be an IRQ pin. So you can cut it if you don't want to use it as an IRQ input, and you can use it for something else. But that'll make performance a lot better, especially if you're using something like LVGL, where it can use interrupts for the touchscreen management. So what I do when I have feathers, especially, one that uses a lot of pins, is uses SPI, and it uses, chip select and DC and the SD select, and there's backlight control and the touch, and there's so much stuff going on the SD. For feathers that are more than just I, if it's just I2C, I don't usually do a lot of testing. But for something like this, what I do is I actually get one of every feather. So I've got ESP8266 and 32U4 and M0 and NRF2 and ESP32 and the V2, and then the TNC feather M4 and 328. I also do now S2 and S3 if it makes sense. I might do that as well, but especially ones that are weird like the ESP32 and 8266 and you know, the teensy, just because there can be little bugs that pop up. So what I do is I actually program each one. So let's take, for example, the ESP32. I program each one, and I have one example sketch that handles all the pin differences. And then this is a touchscreen demo, which you can kind of see. I do a little, you know, touchscreen check, and then the image of the flowers comes from the SD card. So this demo tests SPI, you know, full 4 pins plus SD card, because it reads the image, tests the display, obviously, and then touches the touch screen, I2C, and the IRQ. So this kit kind of like covers all the hardware attached. And then, you know, I just test the reset button. I press the reset button and like, does it reset? I test the on off, you know, if I flip it, does it turn off and turn back on? And so far so good. So this is, you know, after I did the shield, that was the first one I did. I was like, okay, the updates to this are very similar to that. So this will finally be in stock soon. And then I'm also going to get the 3.5-inch version of this FeatherWing in stock. But I tested all of these, including RP2040, which I had over to the side. And all's good. And while I was doing that, I found, you know, not like bugs, but like changes in board support packages. So for example, the ESP8266, which not a lot of people use, to be honest, anymore. A lot of people have moved to the ESP32, S2 and S3 and C3 family. The 82, even Espresso is like, please stop using this chip. It had changes in whether it needed, it used to be you could call yield every once in a while to kick the watchdog timer. And now you have to call delay. So I made some changes to GFX and the image loading library to fix those. And then finally, how are we doing on time? We're doing good? Okay. Finally, I got the VCNL. Folks, remember, this is another one of those libraries that I use ChatGPT for to write a tester library. Sorry, the Arduino library for. This is now, you know, ready to go. And I have a little test program. Sometimes the IRQ doesn't go off, but there you go. Oh, and it's kind of neat. You can actually see it. You can see the LED blinking. No, maybe not. Okay. I thought you could see the IR, the infrared proximity LED blinking, but not. So this is going to be in the shop soon. And then I've got the prototype for the big sister VCNL 4200 on the way as well. All right. So that's everything on my desk. It's a lot. But we can now check out the great search.
Alrighty.
Where in the world is that part I need? The great search with DigiKey.
The Great Search brought to you by DigiKey and Adafruit. Thank you, DigiKey. Every single week, Ladyada uses the power of engineering to help you, yes, you find the things you want on digikey.com. Ladyada, what are you looking for this week?
Good question. So I just covered on the desk of Ladyada that I am revising many display things that were did not really make it through the chip shortage and have to have serious revisions done to them because so many parts changed. Backlight drivers and connectors and TFTs and touchscreen controllers and more and more. So this 2.4, I agree. This 2.4 TFT FeatherWing has been revised. And since I revised the FeatherWing version, you know, like you can plug in, you know, various feathers, I wanted to also update the Raspberry Pi version of like the same thing. So this, let's go to the computer. I'll show off this hat. So hats are hardware attached to top for Raspberry Pis. And I did also put off a lot of these because the Raspberry Pis were not available for like a year-ish. I mean, you could get them, but it was like very challenging. And so, you know, in my gigantic pile of revisions, I hit 450 revisions last night out of 600-ish boards that we manufacture right now. The Raspberry Pi ones kind of got put on the kind of the end of the list because I was like, well, I'm going to wait till Raspberry Pis are available again anyways. So this also needs to be revised. A lot of different pieces and parts are not available. Include the resistive touch controller and the TFT were hard to get, but now that they're back to getting it back to manufacture, another part that actually got discontinued as a specific EEPROM vendor that I use for these EEPROMs is unavailable. So I thought I would also do a quick changeover to use a different vendor for these. I would say, Jelly Bean components. This is the EEPROM. So Raspberry Pi, and there's more Raspberry Pis are available now, so people can start making Raspberry Pi accessories. And one of the standards for hats is not only the shape, but okay, so this Raspberry Pi official article, which is like 9 years old, by the way, from 2014, talks about the standards of hats. And not only does it dictate, the pinouts and the physical shape with all the slots, but down here, sorry, skip it. Okay, they talk about this EEPROM that is on board. So there's 2 special I2C pins on the hat pinout that are not used for like user I2C. They're for hat identification. And if you attach a generic I2C EEPROM to it, and there's a little tool that helps you format the data that goes into the EEPROM so that the Raspberry Pi software can identify it. The idea is that you would be able to put a hat on like a display or like the Sense hat or like activity hat or whatever, or like the Lego hat that they made. And it would automatically know like, oh, I saw that you attached display hat. Let me load up the device tree kernel overlay and any other software and install it and get it ready. So it's like almost as plug and play as USB on like a Mac or Windows computer where you plug in your mouse and it just magically works, or you plug in your monitor and it just magically works. The idea would be the same thing, but with hardware. So let's go back here. So this EEPROM here, and I think, it's a 32, you can barely see, but it says 24C32. These are generic I2C EEPROMs, and 99% of the time they come in this 8 SOIC format. The 24LC or C series is what they usually start with, or sometimes it's Cat 32. So there's 24 in there, and then 32 for 32 kilobit, which is 8 kilobytes. Somewhere in the name, but there's sometimes like a C or an L or a CAT or an ST, and I'll show you that when we search for it. They're all basically generic and identical. Sometimes they have extra capabilities, but you can pretty much use any one you want, and they all respond to I2C address 50, and then they have 3 address pins. They can go from 50 to OX F57, right? Because they have 3 addresses. So let's go to DigiKey, and I'll show you searching for these. Oh, so we, in a previous great search, looked for 25 Q series chips. So you're like, oh, why can't I just use like the, 25 GD25Q or W25Q? The 25 is the SPI version of the NOR flash. It is different than EEPROM. So watch out. And there's also 23 series. 23 LC, and I believe 23 LC is SRAM. Yeah. So let me just verify. Yeah, it's SRAM. SRAM is volatile. When you write data, it doesn't stick around after reboot. So it's great for when we need like a big memory buffer for, say, e-ink displays. We use it as like a back buffer for the e-ink because we don't care how fast it is. E-ink is very slow. But we do need a lot of memory to buffer the entire display, and we might want to do it off the microcontroller if you don't have PSRAM. 25 series is not EEPROM, it's flash. You need to erase and basically write a whole page at the same time. So it's good for large storage. It's not good for small amounts of storage. EEPROM, which is the 24 series, is great for small amounts of data. I don't think you can store more than a couple kilobytes. The SPI NOR flash gets easily up to like 16 megabytes. I think they probably even make more, but it's good for like the megabyte range. EEPROM, good for the kilobyte range and non-volatile, and you can erase and write 1 byte at a time, which is quite nice. Actually, that's good for, and it's also I2C. And these are used often. There's used for like FPGA configurations, MAC address data for LoRa and Ethernet devices, non-secure configuration. Remember, you can read and write from them clearly. They're in clear text. Not good for security key storage. Okay, that's not what they're good for. They're good for calibration data, serial numbers where you don't care if they get changed, but it's good for like identification. And again, like MAC addresses and stuff, or if you want to identify the board, that's a common EDIDs for monitors are stored on the EEPROM. So let's look at memory. So let's look only at active. I searched for I2C EEPROM, so we're only going to get what we're looking for there. I think we've covered FRAM on INMPI before. That is more expensive, but it's instantaneous, right? And it doesn't get affected by X-rays or whatever, like particles in space. And so if you're sending stuff up in space, FRAM is a good idea. We're not doing that. Also, SRAM is volatile, so we don't want SRAM. We want EEPROM only. And we want surface mount because we're going to put this on a surface mount board like this. And there's a lot of options. And then remember, we're going to look for 32 kilobits. Don't forget, a lot of these memories, I even get confused all the time. They are defined in kilobits. And then if you want to know how many kilobytes, you have to divide by 8. 4 kilobytes, 32 kilobits. Let's do it. Okay, so that really pares it down. You will pay more for more kilobits, so just pick the number. One thing to watch for, you can sometimes go up one sizing. So if like you need, if you're spec'd for 1 kilobyte, you may be able to swap in a 4 kilobyte version. All the pins they're all pin compatible, but the I2C commands to address the memory are not compatible. For the smaller memories, you literally will use only 1 byte of address if it's under like 256 bytes of data. And then, up to 64 kilobytes, you would use 2 address, and then beyond that, you'd use 3 address bytes. And so it's not necessarily like, smaller to larger. Just make sure you don't pass over that number of address bits boundary, because your code will no longer work. You can't just put in a huge chip and think it'll work in something that's expecting a 1 or 2 address byte command to get data or write data. Okay, so I think this looks good. Oh, for voltage supply. In this case, for the Raspberry Pi, it's 3.3 volt logic. So I just want to avoid, everything that requires 4.5 volts. I don't think it's that many, to be honest. And then 220 options. Again, these are Jelly Bean parts. Every chip company pretty much makes an I2C EEPROM. Let's just look for in stock and not marketplace. So that gets us 1/2 down. Okay. So you'll notice that there's a lot of different packages for this. So these EEPROMs are not that big, and so you can get them in a lot of package sizes. The, official-ish standard is SOIC. So, again, sometimes they don't start with just 24, they have CAT. Sometimes it's C, sometimes it's LC for like low power. But you'll always see that 24 in there, and you'll always see for 32 kilobits, 32, 64 kilobits, 64, 8 kilobits, 08, etc., etc. They do come in like DFN sizes. One interesting thing is if you are using this in a tightly packed, it's a small package, a small layout. You don't want to like have this huge chunk in SOIC chip taking up a lot of room. You can get the chips in SOT235 as well. For SOT235, I will say one thing to just watch out for. It's not a huge deal, but this is a standard SOIC and TSOT package. The SOT23 drops the address pins. There's 3 address pins missing, and so you'd think, oh, okay, so it only responds to address OX50. actually it will respond to all addresses that it could have been set to if it had address pins. So you will see both OX50, 51, 52, 53, up to 57 on I2C, because it's meant to like, oh, you know, whatever configuration. So if you have nothing else on the I2C bus that could conflict, like in the version of this hat, totally fine to use the SOT23, smaller, not less expensive. Usually it's a little bit more expensive. If you're using the SOIC, you just set the address pins, and then you can have a unique address selection. Do note that they do have internal pull-ups sometimes, or pull-downs, so just watch out for that. You want to connect them, don't leave them floating. And then, you know, sometimes these have other stuff, like they have, you know, serial numbers or protect, you know, write protection areas. But for like general purpose stuff, like just saving and reading data, you don't really have to. You're probably not using some of the special things that each manufacturer adds in to like spike. You know, it's like, oh, this is my recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Like I had cumin. You know, they'll add something a little bit unique to make it tangy, but for generic purposes, it doesn't really matter. So you know, they even come in. If you want tiny packages, you can get it in this like, you know, 2mm probably by 2mm size package, 1.4 by 1.7. So tiny little EEPROM. But you'll see it still has the 24 and 32 and the C in there. This one has a G for some reason. Anyways, searching by price. Let's go specifically say we want SOIC, because I really just do want, and watch out, there's also narrow and wide SOIC. In this case, the part that I'm replacing is narrow. So let me get the narrow or medium width. You can also get SOT 74 tiny SOT series. Yeah, a lot of good options. So I think, what did I pick in the end? I don't know. They're all good. I think, you know, this one is fine. This M24 C32 from ST. You know, it's about like 20 cents in quantity. Sounds reasonable. I2C up to 1 megahertz. Wide voltage supply range. And, you know, good everyday 4 kilobyte I2C EEPROM. So I'm gonna pick some of these up, and I'll get those Pi hats back in the manufacturer.
That's a great search.
Where in the world is that part I need? The great search with DigiKey.
All right, big week. We got a lot going on. We're gonna get in and out. So
Yep.
keep it about a half an hour. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Probably heard our little kiddo in the background. She is hoping and helping.
Yes.
She was moving some dials and knobs to
She's
to
pressing
show
the
going.
buttons. Yes.
Yeah, she can do some things with knobs now.
She's into Wirecast.
And she's learning. Yeah, she's learning how to talk. So you probably heard her saying things. That's it for tonight. We'll see everybody during the week. Full week of shows and more. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.